Here's the expanded segment. When we talk about evil, it's important to recognize that the concept isn't always as straightforward as it seems. We often think of evil as something dramatic, something monstrous. Villains in movies, dictators, or people committing unspeakable crimes. But the truth is, evil can be far more subtle than that. It doesn't always come with a dark cloud or a glaring warning sign. In fact, it often creeps into our lives in ways we don't immediately recognize. And that's why it's so important to understand what we're really dealing with when we talk about evil. Evil, at its core, is about destruction. It's about tearing things down, creating chaos and causing harm, whether it's to individuals, families, communities, or even entire societies. But here's the tricky part. Evil doesn't always announce itself as destruction. Sometimes it disguises itself as something else entirely. It might look like selfishness, indifference, or even ambition. It might show up as someone who seems charming on the surface, but hides a darker, more destructive side. And this is where we need to be vigilant, because evil doesn't always look like what we expect it to. Now, we might think, I'd know evil if I saw it. I'd feel it in my gut. And sometimes that's true, sometimes it's glaringly obvious. But often, evil operates in the shadows. It thrives on manipulation, subtlety, and confusion. It twists the truth, distorts reality, and makes us question our instincts. That's why understanding evil requires us to think beyond the surface. It requires us to recognize patterns of behavior, not just individual actions. Because evil isn't always about one terrible deed. It's about the mindset and the intention behind it. One of the defining characteristics of evil is its complete disregard for others. It's a lack of empathy, a refusal to see people as human beings with feelings, rights, and dignity. Evil views others as tools to be used, obstacles to be removed, or even just collateral damage. And when someone operates from this mindset, when they see others as objects rather than people, it's only a matter of time before harm follows. Whether it's through words, actions, or decisions, evil finds ways to hurt, undermine, and destroy. But let me be clear, evil doesn't always show up in a way that's obvious or loud. In fact, some of the most destructive forms of evil are quiet. They don't make a scene, they just slowly chip away at the things that matter most. A subtle insult here, a manipulative comment there, a broken promise, a selfish decision, a betrayal of trust. These small acts, over time, can cause immense damage. And what makes it even more insidious is that we often don't realize what's happening until it's too late. So how do we define evil in a way that helps us recognize it in the real world? It's not just about the big, headline-grabbing actions. It's about the patterns. The consistent lack of regard for others, the willingness to harm for personal gain, the refusal to take responsibility. Evil is about intent. It's about choosing to hurt, choosing to manipulate, choosing to destroy, even when there's another way. It's about making those choices repeatedly, knowingly, and without remorse. And this brings us to another important point. Evil often justifies itself. It doesn't see itself as evil. It rationalizes its actions, convincing itself that the harm it causes is necessary, deserved, or even good. This self-justification is one of the reasons why evil can be so difficult to confront. Because when someone truly believes they're in the right, they'll go to great lengths to defend their actions. They'll twist facts, rewrite history, and shift blame, all to avoid facing the reality of what they've done. But make no mistake, evil leaves a mark. It might not be obvious at first, but over time, the effects become clear. Relationships break down, trust erodes, communities fracture, and the longer evil is allowed to operate unchecked, the deeper those wounds become. That's why it's so crucial to call it out when we see it, to name it for what it is, and refuse to let it thrive in silence. Evil isn't always loud, but it's always destructive. It might hide behind charm, ambition, or even good intentions, but its impact is undeniable. And once we understand what it looks like, once we're willing to see it for what it is, we can begin to protect ourselves and those we care about. Recognizing evil is the first step in standing against it, and it's a step we can't afford to ignore. Manipulation is one of the most dangerous tools evil people use, and the reason it's so effective is that it works subtly, often without us realizing what's happening until the damage has already been done. When you think about manipulation, it's not just about big, obvious lies or outright coercion. Those are easy to spot. True manipulation is far more insidious. It slips into conversations, relationships, and decisions in ways that make us second-guess ourselves. It twists reality just enough to make us question our instincts, our perceptions, and even our values. And that's why it's so important to understand how it works and what it looks like. At its core, manipulation is about control. It's about someone bending a situation, a narrative, or even a person's will to serve their own purpose. The manipulator doesn't care about fairness, honesty, or respect. They care about one thing: getting what they want, no matter the cost. And they're often willing to do whatever it takes to achieve that. What makes manipulation so effective is that it doesn't always feel hostile or aggressive. In fact, it often masquerades as concern, affection, or support. Manipulators are experts at making us feel like they're on our side, even when their actions prove otherwise. One of the most common tactics manipulators use is playing with our emotions. They know how to push our buttons, how to exploit our fears, insecurities, or desires to steer us in the direction they want. They might use guilt, for example, making us feel responsible for their happiness or their problems. "If you really cared about me, you'd do this," they'll say. Or, "I can't believe you'd treat me this way after everything I've done for you." Statements like these are designed to make us doubt ourselves, to feel like we owe them something, even when we don't. Another tactic is gaslighting. This is when someone deliberately distorts the truth to make us question our reality. They'll deny things they've said or done, twist events to fit their narrative, or claim we're overreacting or imagining things. Over time, gaslighting can erode our confidence in our own judgment, leaving us dependent on the manipulator for a sense of what's real. And that's exactly where they want us. Unsure of ourselves and easy to control. Manipulators are also masters of selective honesty. They'll tell us just enough truth to gain our trust, but they'll omit or distort key details to serve their agenda. They might share personal stories to make us feel connected to them, only to later use that connection as leverage. Or they'll admit to small faults to appear humble and trustworthy while hiding much larger transgressions. It's all part of the game, giving us just enough to lower our guard while keeping us in the dark about their true intentions. Flattery is another tool in the manipulator's arsenal. They know how to make us feel special, valued, and important, at least at first. They'll shower us with compliments, attention, or praise, creating a sense of connection and loyalty. But as soon as they have what they want, the flattery stops. The warmth and charm they used to draw us in are replaced with coldness, criticism, or indifference. This sudden shift can leave us confused and desperate to win back their approval, making us even more vulnerable to their control. And then there's the classic tactic of playing the victim. Manipulators are experts at turning situations around to make themselves look like the injured party. Even when they're clearly in the wrong, they'll find a way to cast blame elsewhere. On circumstances, on other people, or even on us. "You made me do this," they'll say, or "if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had to react this way." By framing themselves as the victim, they deflect accountability and make us feel responsible for their actions. What makes all of this so dangerous is that manipulation doesn't just affect our actions, it affects how we see ourselves. When we're constantly being told that we're wrong, selfish, or ungrateful, it starts to take a toll. We begin to doubt our own worth, our own instincts, our own ability to make decisions. And once that doubt sets in, the manipulator has all the power. They've created a dynamic where they're in control, and we're left scrambling to make sense of it all. The thing about manipulation is that it thrives in silence and confusion. It works best when we don't call it out, when we're too afraid or too unsure to name it for what it is. That's why recognizing manipulation is so important. Because the moment we see it clearly, it starts to lose its power. When we can step back and say, "This isn't right, and I'm not going to let it control me," we begin to reclaim our sense of self. Manipulation is one of the most powerful tools evil people have, but it's not invincible. It relies on secrecy, on deception, and on our willingness to doubt ourselves. Once we shine a light on it, once we name it and refuse to play along, we can begin to break free. And that's something every manipulator fears, because without control, they lose the game. Narcissism plays a central role in many of the actions we associate with evil. It's one of those traits that, at first glance, can seem harmless, maybe even admirable in small doses. After all, confidence and self-assurance are important qualities. But when narcissism takes over, when it grows into an all-consuming obsession with oneself at the expense of everyone else, it becomes something far more dangerous. It becomes a breeding ground for cruelty, manipulation, and destruction. And the most insidious thing about narcissism is how easily it can disguise itself as charm, ambition, or strength, making it difficult to spot until the damage is already done. At the heart of narcissism is an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Narcissists truly believe they are the center of the universe, and everything and everyone else exists to serve their needs. This isn't just about wanting attention or recognition. This is about feeling entitled to it, demanding it, and punishing anyone who fails to provide it. Narcissists have an insatiable need to feel superior, and they'll go to great lengths to maintain that illusion, even if it means tearing others down in the process. One of the most telling signs of narcissism is a complete lack of empathy. Narcissists don't see other people as individuals with their own feelings, thoughts, and experiences. Instead, they see people as tools, means to an end, obstacles to overcome, or sources of validation. This lack of empathy allows them to act in ways that most of us would find unthinkable. They can hurt, betray, and exploit others without a second thought because, in their minds, their needs and desires outweigh everything else. But narcissists don't always appear cruel or malicious at first. In fact, they can be incredibly charming when they want to be. They know how to say all the right things, how to make people feel seen, valued, and important. This charm is a tool they use to draw people in, to gain their trust and admiration. But it's never genuine. It's always a performance, a means to an end. And once they've gotten what they want, whether it's attention, support, or control, the mask comes off, revealing the selfishness and indifference underneath. Another hallmark of narcissism is an inability to handle criticism. Narcissists see themselves as perfect, untouchable, and any challenge to that perception feels like a personal attack. When faced with criticism, they don't reflect or take accountability. Instead, they lash out, deflect blame, or turn the situation around to make themselves the victim. "It's not my fault," they'll say. "You're just jealous," or "you're out to get me." This refusal to accept responsibility is a defining trait of narcissism, and one of the reasons why narcissists are so difficult to confront or reason with. One of the most dangerous aspects of narcissism is how it drives people to pursue power and control. For a narcissist, power isn't just about influence, it's about validation. It's about proving their superiority and forcing others to acknowledge it. And because they lack empathy, they have no problem using manipulation, deceit, or even outright harm to achieve their goals. They see relationships not as partnerships, but as power dynamics. Someone has to win and someone has to lose. And the narcissist will do whatever it takes to ensure they're the one on top. What's particularly troubling is how narcissists thrive in environments that reward their behavior. In workplaces, for example, their confidence and ambition can be mistaken for leadership. In social settings, their charm and charisma can make them the center of attention. But beneath the surface, their true nature reveals itself in the way they treat others. They belittle, exploit, and discard people once they're no longer useful. They create chaos and division, leaving a trail of broken relationships and damaged trust in their wake. It's important to recognize that narcissism isn't just about arrogance or self-absorption. It's about a fundamental inability or refusal to see the value in others. It's about believing that their wants and needs are more important than anyone else's and acting accordingly. And when someone operates from this mindset, it's only a matter of time before harm follows. It doesn't just affect the individuals who fall into a narcissist's orbit, it affects entire communities, organizations, and even societies. Narcissistic leaders, for example, can wreak havoc on the institutions they're supposed to serve, prioritizing their ego over the well-being of others. In personal relationships, narcissists can leave lasting emotional scars, making it difficult for their victims to trust or feel safe again. The key to dealing with narcissism is to see it for what it is. Narcissists are masters of illusion, and their greatest strength lies in their ability to manipulate how others perceive them. But once we strip away the charm, the bravado, and the excuses, what's left is a person who is deeply insecure, selfish, and incapable of genuine connection. Recognizing this truth is the first step in protecting ourselves and others from their influence. Narcissism may present itself as strength, but in reality it's a profound weakness. One that drives people to harm, deceive, and destroy in their relentless pursuit of validation. The sooner we see through the facade, the sooner we can begin to break free from its grip. One of the most consistent and troubling traits of evil people is their complete inability or refusal to take accountability for their actions. You see, accountability requires honesty, humility, and the willingness to confront one's flaws and mistakes. But for someone operating from a place of malice, none of those things are on the table. Instead, they deflect, blame, and manipulate in order to escape responsibility. And the harm caused by this lack of accountability isn't limited to just their immediate actions. It ripples outward, creating chaos and confusion in the lives of everyone around them. When people refuse to take responsibility for their actions, they create a distorted version of reality. It's no longer about what actually happened or what was right or wrong. It's about how they can twist the narrative to make themselves look blameless. This is where deflection comes into play. Evil people are masters at shifting attention away from themselves. If they've made a mistake, they'll point the finger elsewhere. If they've hurt someone, they'll find a way to make it seem like the other person deserved it. And if you try to call them out, they'll flip the script entirely, making you feel like the problem for even bringing it up. This tactic of deflection is particularly insidious because it plants seeds of doubt. It makes you question your own judgment, your own sense of what's fair and true. You might start to wonder, am I being too harsh? Did I overreact? And that's exactly what they want. Because as long as you're doubting yourself, you're not holding them accountable. And if they can keep you in that state of uncertainty, they can continue to operate without consequence. Another hallmark of this behavior is blame shifting. Evil people have an uncanny ability to make everything someone else's fault. They'll reframe events, twist words, and selectively omit details until the story fits their version of reality. And in their version, they're always the victim or the hero, never the villain. If they failed to meet a commitment, it's because you were too demanding. If they lied, it's because you didn't make it safe for them to tell the truth. If they hurt you, it's because you provoked them. There's always an excuse, always a reason why they're not at fault. What's particularly damaging about this pattern is how it affects the people around them. Over time, you might find yourself walking on eggshells, trying to avoid situations that could lead to conflict or blame. You might start overcompensating, taking on more than your share of responsibility just to keep the peace. And in doing so, you're not only enabling their behavior, but also losing sight of your own boundaries and values. This is how their lack of accountability begins to spread. It doesn't just stay with them, it seeps into the dynamics of everyone they interact with. Evil people are also experts at playing the victim. This is one of their most powerful tools for avoiding accountability, because it shifts sympathy toward them and away from the actual harm they've caused. Even when they're clearly in the wrong, they'll find a way to portray themselves as the one who's been wronged. They might exaggerate their struggles, invent grievances, or bring up unrelated hardships to distract from their actions. And because most of us are naturally empathetic, it's easy to get caught up in their story and forget why the conversation started in the first place. But perhaps the most telling sign of their refusal to take accountability is their lack of remorse. When most people hurt someone, there's a genuine sense of regret. Even if the harm was unintentional, they'll want to make amends, to acknowledge what they've done and find a way to repair the damage. But evil people don't operate this way. They don't apologize, not sincerely anyway. If they do say sorry, it's often hollow, a tactic to pacify you rather than a reflection of true accountability. And more often than not, even their apologies come with a catch. "I'm sorry you feel that way," they'll say, subtly placing the blame back on you. This refusal to own their actions isn't just frustrating, it's harmful. It undermines trust, erodes relationships, and creates an environment where bad behavior goes unchecked. Without accountability, there's no growth, no resolution, no healing. Instead, there's just a cycle of harm that repeats itself over and over again. And as long as they're able to deflect blame, shift responsibility, and avoid consequences, they'll continue to act with impunity. The thing about accountability is that it's not just about admitting fault, it's about integrity. It's about having the courage to face the consequences of your actions and the humility to learn from them. But for someone who thrives on manipulation and control, those qualities are seen as weaknesses, not strengths. And so they do everything in their power to avoid them, leaving a trail of confusion and hurt in their wake. Recognizing this pattern is crucial because it allows us to protect ourselves from its effects. When we see the signs of deflection, blame shifting, and false victimhood, we can choose not to engage, not to take on responsibility that isn't ours. And in doing so, we not only shield ourselves from their influence, but also hold up a mirror to their behavior, making it harder for them to escape the truth. Cruelty is often seen as an overt and unmistakable act, something shocking, brutal, and impossible to miss. But the truth is, real cruelty is rarely so obvious. It often manifests in subtle, calculated ways that wear people down over time, leaving scars that are just as deep as those inflicted by physical harm. And when cruelty becomes a defining feature of someone's behavior, it reveals a disturbing aspect of their character, a complete disregard for the humanity of others. This is one of the clearest hallmarks of truly evil individuals. They find ways to cause pain, whether emotional or physical, and they do so with an almost deliberate precision. What's particularly disturbing about cruelty is how intentional it often is. It's not accidental or thoughtless, it's purposeful. It's the cutting remark designed to humiliate, the calculated insult meant to undermine confidence, the small but deliberate actions taken to make someone feel powerless or unworthy. Cruel people often take pleasure in the pain they cause. It feeds their sense of superiority and control. They thrive on the discomfort, fear, or humiliation of others, because, in their minds, it reaffirms their dominance, and that's what it's really about. Power. This is why cruelty often surfaces in relationships where there's an imbalance of power. Whether it's a boss belittling an employee, a partner controlling the other's decisions, or a parent using harsh words to diminish a child's spirit. The person inflicting the harm feels a sense of control in these moments. They may justify their behavior by claiming it's for the other person's own good, or that it's necessary, but the reality is far simpler. They do it because they can, and because it serves their own twisted sense of satisfaction. One of the most insidious forms of cruelty is the kind that hides behind a facade of normalcy. These are the people who know how to mask their behavior just enough to avoid detection. They might lash out in private, but appear perfectly kind and charming in public. They might undermine someone's confidence in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Making a joke at someone's expense here, ignoring their efforts there. Over time, these seemingly small acts of cruelty add up, creating a culture of fear, self-doubt, or submission around them. And because it's so gradual, it often takes people a long time to recognize what's happening. Cruelty doesn't always take the form of direct attacks either. Sometimes it's about neglect, indifference, or the refusal to help when someone is in need. A person who watches someone struggle and chooses to do nothing, even when they have the power to help, is exhibiting a form of cruelty. It's the silent act of withholding kindness, compassion, or basic humanity. This type of cruelty can be just as damaging as more overt forms because it communicates a clear message. You don't matter. The psychological impact of cruelty is profound. It creates wounds that aren't easily visible, but are deeply felt. When someone is subjected to cruelty, especially over an extended period, it can erode their sense of self-worth, their ability to trust others, and even their desire to engage with the world. It's a form of destruction that leaves no physical evidence, but does irreparable damage to a person's spirit. And the people who inflict this kind of harm often know exactly what they're doing. They know the power of their words and actions, and they wield them with precision. What's particularly dangerous is how cruelty can escalate. Someone who starts with small, seemingly insignificant acts can grow bolder over time, especially if they're not held accountable. They may test boundaries, pushing further and further to see what they can get away with. And if no one intervenes, they often become more brazen in their actions. This is how cruelty snowballs. What begins as subtle manipulation or neglect can eventually turn into overt abuse. One of the most chilling aspects of cruelty is how it dehumanizes its victims. People who are repeatedly subjected to cruel behavior can start to internalize it, believing that they somehow deserve the treatment they're receiving. This is exactly what the person inflicting the cruelty wants. They want their victims to feel small, powerless, and unworthy because it makes it easier to maintain control. It's a vicious cycle, one that can only be broken by recognizing the behavior for what it is and refusing to tolerate it. The antidote to cruelty is courage. Courage to stand up to it, to call it out, and to protect those who are vulnerable. Because cruelty thrives in silence. It thrives when people look the other way, when they make excuses for the behavior, or when they convince themselves it's not their problem. But the moment we confront it, the moment we shine a light on it, its power begins to fade. It's not easy, it never is, but it's necessary. Because cruelty, left unchecked, will continue to spread, causing harm not just to its immediate victims, but to everyone it touches. Evil people use cruelty as a weapon because they know how effective it is. They know the pain it causes, the control it grants them, and the fear it instills. But understanding this is the first step in fighting back. By refusing to accept cruelty, by standing firm against it, we can strip it of its power and begin to heal the wounds it leaves behind. Deception is the lifeblood of evil people. It is how they operate, how they manipulate, and how they maintain control over others. At its core, deception is about the deliberate distortion of reality. It's not just about lying, it's about constructing an illusion, a false world that serves their agenda. Evil people understand the power of perception, and they wield it like a weapon. They know that if they can control what others believe, they can control their thoughts, their emotions, and ultimately their actions. What makes deception so dangerous is its subtlety. Most people think of lying as something obvious. A blatant falsehood, a clear denial of the truth. But the kind of deception we're talking about here is much more insidious. It's not just about saying things that aren't true. It's about withholding information, twisting facts, or presenting half-truths in a way that misleads. It's about planting doubt, creating confusion, and making it difficult to discern what's real and what's not. And the more sophisticated the deception, the harder it is to recognize. Evil people are masters of manipulation because they understand human psychology. They know how to exploit vulnerabilities, how to read emotions, and how to craft their words in a way that resonates. They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, even if it's a lie. They'll promise you things they have no intention of delivering, all to gain your trust and keep you under their influence. And once they've got you in their web, they'll use deception to keep you there, feeding you just enough false hope or reassurance to make you doubt your instincts. One of the most common forms of deception is gaslighting. It's a term that's been used more frequently in recent years, but its roots go far deeper. Gaslighting is about making someone question their reality, their memory, and even their sanity. It's the subtle manipulation of facts to create confusion and self-doubt. For example, an evil person might tell you, "That's not what I said," even when you know it is. Or they'll insist, "You're overreacting," when your reaction is entirely justified. Over time, this constant distortion of reality wears people down, leaving them unsure of what's true and what's not. Deception also thrives in the form of false appearances. Evil people often go to great lengths to present themselves as something they're not. They'll play the role of the caring friend, the devoted partner, or the selfless leader, all while hiding their true intentions. This facade is carefully constructed, designed to earn trust and admiration. And because they're so skilled at playing these roles, it can take a long time for people to see through the act. By the time the mask slips, significant damage has often already been done. Another layer of deception is the use of scapegoats. When evil people are confronted or feel threatened, they'll often deflect attention by pointing fingers elsewhere. They'll shift blame onto others, creating a convenient target to draw attention away from their own wrongdoing. This not only allows them to avoid accountability, but also creates division and conflict among those around them. It's a calculated strategy, one that keeps people distracted and prevents them from uniting against the true source of the problem. Evil people also excel at using deception to create dependency. They'll make you believe you need them, that you can't succeed without their help or approval. They'll manipulate circumstances to make you feel isolated, cutting you off from sources of support and making you more reliant on them. This kind of manipulation is incredibly effective because it taps into basic human fears. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, and fear of being alone. And once you're dependent on them, they can use that dependency to control you. The impact of deception is profound. It erodes trust, not just in the person who's deceiving you, but in people in general. It makes you question your own judgment, your own ability to see the truth. And this is precisely what evil people want. They want to keep you in a state of uncertainty, because uncertainty